Chapter 1. Chains of Sorrow. The Early Years of Slavery. The scene is grim. We are stepping back into a time when the world looked away, when greed swallowed empathy and cruelty wore a crown. Here begins the tale of slavery in America. Imagine, you're standing on the coast of Africa centuries ago. Laughter, life, and culture fill the air. But then, ships arrive. Not just any ships. These ships carry men with chains, waiting to bind the lives of others. The people of Africa, mothers, fathers, children, warriors, and wise ones, captured. They are taken by force or deception, dragged from their homes, from their lands, and from their lives. They are crammed into the bellies of these ships, packed so tightly they can barely move, barely breathe. Days pass, weeks pass, months of darkness, dampness, sickness, and death. The Middle Passage, they called it. But for those chained below deck, it is a passage through hell. The cries of pain, the moans of despair, they echo across the ocean, unheard by the world above. And when they finally reach American shores, any remaining hope begins to vanish. They are auctioned, sold to the highest bidder, like cattle, stripped of names, torn from families. A man, once free and proud, now stands in chains. A woman, once dignified and loved, now forced to bow. A child, barely old enough to understand, is taken from her mother's arms, sold off to another plantation, another life far away. Each person is reduced to an object, a property, something to be worked, used, bought, or sold. Day after day, they labor. From dawn until dark, their hands and backs pushed to breaking points. The hot southern sun burns down on their shoulders. The whip, it cracks, leaving wounds that will never fully heal. Even as they grow weaker, they are told to work faster, harder, longer. But the cruelty doesn't end with their work. No, there's more. More rules, more pain, more ways to break the spirit. They are forbidden to learn, forbidden to speak their own languages, forbidden to practice their traditions. They are separated from everything that made them who they were, forced to give up not just their lives, but their very identities. Yet even here, even now, a spark of resistance begins to glow. Some fight back with all the strength they have left, even knowing the consequences. Some run, escaping into the night, risking everything to taste freedom, even if only for a moment. They know the dangers, the chance of capture, the punishments waiting for those who try to flee. But the desire for freedom burns too brightly to ignore. And others, unable to run, resist in quiet, powerful ways. They tell stories of the homeland to their children, teaching them to remember where they came from. They sing songs, songs that tell of pain, but also of resilience. Songs that remind them of their humanity, of their courage, of their strength. In the fields, they hum and sing while they work, lifting each other's spirits, sending messages hidden in melodies, sharing their grief, but also their pride. These songs, these whispers of memory and hope, fill the air, too quiet for the overseers to care, but loud enough to keep the spirit of a people alive. Small acts of defiance, like planting seeds in a secret garden, hidden from the master's gaze. A smile passed between two strangers in chains, a quick hand held in silent comfort. Each small act says, "I am still here. I am still me. You cannot take that from me." There are stories, powerful stories, of those who dared to rise up. In Haiti, a revolution was brewing. News of it traveled, reaching the enslaved people in America, whispering that freedom was possible. And in America, too, there were uprisings, small yet fierce. Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, men who saw the injustice and chose to fight, even knowing the price they would pay. The masters feared these uprisings, feared the unity, feared the power of people pushed beyond their breaking point. And so, they tried to stamp out even the smallest sparks of resistance. Harsher punishments, stricter rules, laws forbidding even the gathering of more than a few enslaved people in one place. But still, the spirit of resistance lived on. And for those who couldn't escape, who couldn't fight, who couldn't even whisper, there was a deep, hidden strength. They endured. Day after day, they held on, for themselves, for their children, for a future they could barely imagine but hoped would be different. Through unimaginable pain, they found ways to survive, to push forward, to remain human. They laughed when they could, found joy in small moments, clung to their families when possible. And, even in the darkest moments, they held onto a flicker of hope that one day, somehow, this suffering would end. Chains of sorrow. The chains were real, heavy, merciless. But beneath them, hearts still beat, dreams still lived. The enslaved may have been bound, but their spirits refused to be broken. They looked up at the stars each night, wondering if their loved ones, torn from them and sent far away, were looking at the same sky. Wondering if, perhaps, someday, freedom might find them under those same stars. The journey had just begun. Chapter 2. The Rising Voices. Slave Resistance and Rebellion. Not all were silent. Some, even in chains, dared to stand tall, to fight, to run, to dream of a world where freedom wasn't just a whisper, but a shout. They were brave souls, willing to risk it all for a taste of liberation. Amid the despair, these voices of resistance rose, like thunder on the horizon, signaling a storm of defiance that no chains could hold back. We begin with one of the most powerful stories, the rebellion led by Nat Turner. Nat Turner, a man born into slavery, but a man of vision, of fire, of faith. He could read the Bible and saw in its words a call to fight against oppression. For him, this wasn't just a choice, it was a destiny. And so, in the year 1831, he began to gather others who, like him, had felt the weight of cruelty. They waited. They planned. And when the time was right, they rose up. On that fateful night, the air was thick with tension. Turner and his followers moved from house to house, striking at the very heart of the slaveholding South. The rebellion was fierce, swift, and unforgettable. Though the uprising was put down within days, the fear it instilled lingered. For the enslavers, it was a warning. For the enslaved, it was a reminder that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire. But not all acts of resistance were so bold or so bloody. Sometimes resistance was a quiet whisper in the night. The enslaved, forbidden from gathering in groups, would meet in secret, sharing stories of hope, passing down tales of ancestors who were once free. And as the flames of their small fires flickered in the darkness, they whispered words of courage to one another, stories of rebellion and freedom, a thread of hope weaving through each generation. Then there was a network of courage that stretched across the land, a hidden path to freedom known as the Underground Railroad. It was not a real railroad, but a secret passage built by brave souls who risked their lives to help others escape. The Underground Railroad was made up of conductors who led the way, and stations where those fleeing could find rest, food, and shelter. Harriet Tubman, one name among many, but a name that echoed with bravery. Tubman herself had escaped slavery, but she chose to return again and again to lead others to freedom. She was known as Moses, the one who would lead her people to safety. She walked through forests, crossed rivers, traveled by night, navigating by the North Star, leading men, women, children to a life they had only dreamed of. Every trip was dangerous, every step risky. But Tubman, undaunted, declared, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." She became a legend, a symbol of unbreakable spirit. Escape was dangerous, yes, but to remain, for many, was a slow death, so they risked it. Some dressed in disguise, some hid in barrels or coffins, others journeyed on foot for miles, without food, without water, driven by the single thought, freedom. And even for those who could not escape, small acts of rebellion became their way to resist. They broke tools, slowed down their work, misunderstood orders. These were acts of courage, small victories in a world that denied them any power. They created their own songs, too, songs that told stories, songs that lifted their spirits. "Swing low, sweet chariot," they sang. To the enslavers, it was just a song, but for the enslaved, it was a message, a promise that one day a chariot might come to carry them home. At night, these songs drifted through the fields, haunting, beautiful, filled with hope. For those who listened carefully, the songs spoke of hidden paths, of rivers to cross, of a light in the darkness. This music became a language of resistance, a secret way to communicate hope, to share courage. But there was another kind of resistance, the quiet yet powerful decision to keep faith, to hold on to one's humanity, to survive. For some, that meant keeping their families together, even when the threat of separation loomed. Parents would pass down their history, their stories, to their children, telling them about the land their ancestors came from, about freedom. "Remember who you are," they whispered. "Remember where you come from." In this world of cruelty, even the simple act of remembering was defiance, for by remembering, they refused to let slavery define them, refused to let the oppressor erase their culture, their pride, their stories. Each memory, each tradition passed down, was a victory. And so, resistance took many forms, from the fierce rebellions that shook the land to the quiet defiance that persisted in the face of daily cruelty. Each act, each choice, each sacrifice, it was a thread, weaving together a tapestry of resilience that would last generations. For every rebellion, there were countless acts of courage that went unseen, unknown. Yet they were there, like stars in a night sky, each shining its small light, each keeping the flame of hope alive. Chapter 3. Voices for Freedom. Abolitionists and Allies. A new sound begins to rise, a sound not of chains or whips, but of words, powerful, fiery words that demand change. Voices, once scattered, now gather into a mighty chorus, calling out across the land, declaring that slavery must end. Among these voices stands Frederick Douglass. Imagine him, a man who had once been enslaved, now standing tall and free, his voice commanding and clear. Douglass speaks from experience, from a place of pain and resilience. His words echo through halls, filling listeners with the weight of his journey. He tells of the horrors he endured, yet also of his unyielding will. "I would unite with anybody to do right, and with nobody to do wrong," he declares. His speeches, his writings, they are like thunder, shaking the very ground under the institution of slavery. And then there is Sojourner Truth, a woman who had endured unspeakable hardship, but whose spirit remains unbroken. Her name itself is a statement. She is a traveler for truth, a voice for justice. "Ain't I a woman?" she asks, challenging a room filled with those who doubt her strength, her intelligence, her worth. With every word, she defies the chains, the prejudice, the disbelief that surrounds her. She demands equality, not only for the enslaved, but for women, for all who are silenced. Her voice is soft, but powerful, a whisper that becomes a roar. But the battle for freedom is not fought alone. Joining them is William Lloyd Garrison, a white man who has never felt the sting of a whip or the chains of slavery, but who dedicates his life to fighting it. Through his newspaper, The Liberator, Garrison sends out a bold message week after week, page after page. His words are sharp, unyielding. He writes, "I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch." His determination, his passion, they spark a fire in the hearts of many, urging them to join the fight. Together, these voices form a powerful front. They gather at conventions, holding meetings, rallies, and speeches. They fill the air with ideas, with questions that make people uncomfortable, with truths that cut deep. Black and white abolitionists stand side by side, united in purpose, creating an alliance that defies the norms of their society. In a time when most see color as a barrier, they see it as a call for action. Each of them knows the risks. Speaking out against slavery is dangerous, especially for black abolitionists. They face threats, violence, even death, but they stand firm because the cause is greater than fear. Douglas, Truth, Garrison, and many others choose to keep fighting, no matter the cost. In the streets, pamphlets and flyers spread like wildfire. They're passed from hand to hand, smuggled into towns where slavery reigns, read in secret by those who yearn for freedom. These pamphlets tell the truth about slavery, exposing the horrors to those who have been blind to them. The movement grows stronger and louder. In Congress, abolitionists press for change, demanding that the government recognize the humanity of millions. They speak with force, their words a battering ram against the stubborn walls of injustice. Each speech is a blow, each debate a struggle, but they refuse to be silenced. And there are others who join this battle from the shadows, risking their own freedom for the freedom of others. Quakers, ministers, farmers, mothers, fathers. Ordinary people who hide those escaping from slavery, offering shelter and guidance. They form networks, like veins of gold, running through the country, secret but strong. Their homes become safe havens, their lives intertwined with the fight for freedom. They are abolitionists, even if their names never make it into history books. But it is not just words and safe houses. There are those who bring change through the law, those who go to court, fighting for the rights of the enslaved. Lawyers and judges who argue that slavery is against the very principles of freedom that America was founded upon. Some cases are won, others are lost. But each battle is a step forward, a chisel breaking away at the stone of oppression. And in these halls of power, another sound emerges, the rumblings of resistance from those who wish to keep the old ways. Slaveholders, politicians, and businessmen stand firm against this tide of change. They fight back, passing laws to silence abolitionists, spreading propaganda to convince the public that slavery is a necessary evil, a pillar of the South. They try to drown out the voices calling for freedom. But the abolitionists, they are undeterred. In this rising tide, hope begins to stir in the hearts of the enslaved. They hear whispers of these powerful voices, hear the stories of people, both black and white, fighting for their freedom. It is as if somewhere someone is lifting the weight just a little, reminding them that they are not forgotten, that somewhere someone is fighting for them. Years pass. The voices grow louder. The call for abolition, once dismissed as the dream of a few, becomes a roar that the nation can no longer ignore. The tension builds. The push against slavery grows fiercer. The country trembles, divided, as abolitionists press harder, refusing to relent until every man, woman, and child is free. Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, William Lloyd Garrison, and countless unnamed allies. Together, they are a force, a beacon of justice. Their words echo across the land, breaking through the silence of oppression. They are voices for freedom, voices that say, enough, voices that demand the end of a darkness that has lasted too long. And so, the path is set. The voices do not fade. They grow, they unite, they shout, sing, write, and fight, building a movement that will not stop, will not rest, until the chains of slavery are broken. Chapter 4. The Great Divide. Civil War and Emancipation. America stands at a breaking point, a trembling line dividing North and South, Union and Confederacy, freedom and enslavement. The tension hangs heavy in the air, thick and dark, as the nation braces for the unimaginable. The people of America know what's coming. War. Not a distant war fought on foreign soil, but a war at home, a war against neighbors, a war of ideals that cuts through families, friendships, and the very soul of a country. The first shots are fired at Fort Sumter, and the Civil War begins. Soldiers line up, row after row, their faces young, their hearts pounding with fear and resolve. The sounds of battle erupt around them. Cannon blasts, gunfire, horses' hooves thundering through fields. The air is thick with smoke and chaos, as if the very earth itself is protesting this terrible conflict. On both sides, there are casualties, fathers, sons, brothers, all swept up in this brutal struggle. This war is different. It isn't just about land or borders. It's about an idea, a question that has haunted America since its founding. Can a country built on freedom truly allow slavery to continue? And for the enslaved, this question is not about politics. It is about life, about humanity, about the hope of finally breaking free from the chains that have held them for generations. In the South, enslaved men, women, and children hear rumors, whispers that the North fights not just to keep the Union together, but for their freedom. And in the North, black men step forward, volunteering to fight in a war that could mean freedom for their families, for themselves, and for all enslaved people across the nation. They join the ranks, wearing Union blue, facing dangers not only from the Confederates, but also from those who doubt their place on the battlefield. The war drags on, longer, bloodier than anyone imagined. Each battle leaves the ground soaked with lives lost. The struggle is fierce, brutal, with victories and defeats on both sides. And as the war wears on, the need for a bold declaration grows stronger. Then, at last, President Abraham Lincoln takes a decisive step. On January 1st, 1863, he signs the Emancipation Proclamation. In a stroke of the pen, Lincoln declares that all enslaved people in the Confederate States shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. The words are powerful, but freedom doesn't come in an instant. For many, it is still a dream, just out of reach. But the Emancipation Proclamation changes the war. It is now a fight not only to save the Union, but to end slavery once and for all. For the enslaved, this news spreads like wildfire. Though they are far from the battlefields, the words of the proclamation reach them, filling them with a mixture of hope and fear. Some know that the journey to freedom will still be hard, filled with risks and unknowns, but they dare to dream of a life without chains. On the battlefront, black soldiers of the Union Army fight with fierce determination, their courage unshakable. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, one of the first black regiments in the North, charges into battle, facing danger head-on. They know that this fight is personal. They are not just fighting for a country, but for their people, for their families, for a promise that has been denied them for too long. The battles rage on, fierce and merciless. Cities fall, lives are lost. But the Union soldiers press forward, pushing back the Confederacy with each hard-won mile. As the war nears its end, the dream of freedom grows stronger, brighter. Finally, in April of 1865, the war ends. The Confederacy surrenders. The Union has won. But what does victory mean? For some, it is a joyful celebration, a relief after years of bloodshed. But for others, especially those newly freed from slavery, this victory feels uncertain. They are free. But what does freedom look like? Where do they go? How do they rebuild their lives in a country that has fought so long to deny them humanity? Families separated by slavery now search for one another, moving across states, following rumors, hoping against hope to be reunited with loved ones they were forced to leave behind. Mothers look for sons, brothers search for sisters. They walk miles, carrying the weight of their past, but also the hope of a new beginning. And there is joy, but also fear. Though slavery is abolished, the road ahead is far from easy. Many in the South refuse to accept this new reality, clinging to the old ways, determined to hold on to power. The former enslaved may be free, but they are far from equal. Discrimination, hatred, and danger still surround them. Yet, the Emancipation Proclamation marks a turning point. It is a declaration that America can no longer ignore the voices of those it once enslaved. It is the beginning of a new chapter, a step toward justice, though the path remains rocky and uncertain. As the dust settles, a new struggle emerges, the struggle to turn this fragile freedom into a reality that all can see, touch, and hold. It is a long road, full of obstacles, but hope endures. The vision of freedom, once a dream, now a right, guides them forward. And so, the chapter closes, but the story continues. The Civil War has ended, but the fight for true equality, for true freedom, that journey has only just begun. Chapter 5. Freedom's Price. The Struggle of Reconstruction. The war has ended, but peace is still out of reach. The battlefields may be quiet, yet the country itself remains divided, haunted by the wounds of slavery. And for the newly freed Black Americans, this is a time of great hope and great danger. Reconstruction begins. It is a time to rebuild, to start over, to shape a new life in a land that has denied them freedom for so long. Families, torn apart by slavery, search for each other, crossing miles, following whispers and rumors. Some find their loved ones. Others face only silence, an emptiness that speaks of loss too deep to name. But still, they press on, determined to create lives of their own. They are no longer slaves, but the road ahead is far from smooth. Black men and women dream of farms, businesses, and homes. They want to vote, to be educated, to have a voice. They want to be a part of this new America. For a moment, it seems as if their hopes may come true. New laws are passed. New rights are won. The 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. The 14th Amendment grants citizenship to all born in the United States. And the 15th Amendment gives black men the right to vote. Black leaders begin to emerge, men who once would have been silenced, now stepping forward to represent their communities, to bring change. Schools for black children open, teaching them to read, to write, to dream. But with each step forward, there is a pushback, a fierce, relentless backlash from those who refuse to accept this new reality. Some, unable to let go of the old ways, turn to violence, to terror. The Ku Klux Klan rises in the dead of night, cloaked in white robes, their faces hidden but their hatred clear. They burn homes, destroy schools, attack black communities, leaving fear and blood in their wake. They are determined to keep black Americans in their place, to remind them that, despite the laws, they are still not truly free. Yet, the newly freed do not give up. They build their lives in spite of the terror, despite the threats. They come together, forming communities that support and protect each other. They build churches that become not only places of worship, but also centers of education, gathering, and strength. The church is a refuge, a place where hope is kindled, where dreams are shared. But poverty is another prison. Many black families, with no land, no resources, no choice, fall into the system of sharecropping, a cycle that promises freedom but traps them in debt. They work the land, hoping to make a living, only to find that year after year they owe more than they earn. The weight of poverty presses down, squeezing dreams dry, making freedom feel distant, almost like a mirage. And the laws, they begin to change. The promises made during Reconstruction start to fade as the years pass. The federal government pulls back its protection, leaving black Americans vulnerable, at the mercy of local laws that strip away their rights piece by piece. The era of Reconstruction ends, and a new era of segregation, of Jim Crow, begins. Yet even in this darkness, there is resilience, a strength that refuses to break. Black Americans continue to organize, to speak out, to fight for the rights they were promised. They send their children to the schools they built. They open businesses. They create newspapers. They build communities that are rich with culture, history, and pride. They know the price of freedom, and they are willing to pay it. For themselves, for their children, for generations to come. The dream of equality is under constant attack, but it does not die. It lives on in each act of courage, in each person who stands up against oppression, in each voice that demands justice. Chapter 6. Walls of Injustice, the Birth of Jim Crow. The war is over. The chains are broken. Yet, a new form of bondage rises in the South, one that doesn't use metal shackles but words written into law. the hope of Reconstruction fades, and in its place, another oppressive system emerges, casting a shadow over Black Americans. A shadow known as Jim Crow. Jim Crow laws. They are words on paper, yet they build invisible walls stronger than any stone or brick. These laws are designed to keep Black Americans in their place, reinforcing a twisted idea that they should remain separate and never truly equal. Separate but equal becomes the slogan. But it's a lie. Black Americans see this truth in every part of their lives. In schools, children are divided by color. Black children sent to schools that are smaller, poorer, with tattered books and cracked desks, while white children learn in spacious classrooms with new books and endless resources. It is not equal at all, and everyone knows it. The walls of injustice are clear to see, yet no one who enforces them seems to care. Restaurants, theaters, water fountains, buses, all are divided. In each of these spaces, there are signs, bold, insulting, cruel, white only, colored. Black Americans are forced to take the back entrances of buildings, to drink from separate fountains, to sit in designated sections. The message is loud and clear. You are not welcome. You are not equal. Imagine it. A world where even something as simple as sitting on a park bench is a statement of power and prejudice. Black Americans are denied access to public parks, forced to create their own spaces, their own parks, their own neighborhoods. Society has pushed them aside, forcing them into a corner. Yet in that corner, they begin to build something new, something resilient. This world is not just unfair, it's cruel. For each attempt Black Americans make to improve their lives, Jim Crow laws stand ready to knock them back down. Voting rights? Stripped away. New literacy tests and poll taxes are put in place, all designed to prevent Black people from casting a ballot. Those who dare to vote face threats, violence, even death. The Ku Klux Klan lurks in the shadows, enforcing Jim Crow with fear and terror. Hooded figures appear at night, burning crosses, spreading hatred. Black families live with this constant fear, knowing that at any moment they could become a target. This is the South under Jim Crow, a place where hope seems buried under a mountain of prejudice. Yet, even in this darkness, Black Americans refuse to surrender their dignity. They form communities filled with life, laughter, and culture. Their neighborhoods, though separated by law, become places of strength. Black-owned businesses rise, offering jobs and services to their people. Churches become centers of community, places of hope, where voices lift in song, reminding each other that they are worthy, they are strong, and they are not alone. In music, in art, in storytelling, they find a voice, a way to express both their pain and their pride. Blues and jazz begin to echo through the streets, filling the night with the sounds of resilience. The music is a reflection of their journey, haunting, beautiful, filled with sorrow, but also with joy. Through their creativity, Black Americans reclaim their identity, their heritage, their voices. In this divided world, Black educators and leaders rise, determined to empower their communities. They know that knowledge is a powerful tool, a weapon against the lies of separate but equal. Teachers dedicate their lives to educating Black children, inspiring them to reach higher, to dream beyond the boundaries society has placed on them. These leaders remind their communities that despite the obstacles, they are more than the labels forced upon them. and the dream of equality, it does not die. Though Jim Crow tries to silence them, Black Americans continue to hope, to organize, to resist. They hold on to the memory of freedom, the promise made by the Emancipation Proclamation, the rights they fought so hard for during Reconstruction. They know that these rights are theirs, no matter what Jim Crow says. As they face each barrier, each injustice, they are strengthened by the knowledge that they come from a line of survivors, ancestors who endured slavery, who fought for freedom, who resisted with courage. Jim Crow may build walls, but it cannot erase their history, their pride, their determination. So, they wait, and they prepare. They gather their voices, their strength, their unity. They teach their children to stand tall, to know their worth. They build a foundation of resilience, one that will one day rise to challenge these walls of injustice. The era of Jim Crow is filled with pain, with struggle, but also with quiet, powerful resistance. Black Americans may be forced to navigate a world built to keep them down, but they do so with dignity, with courage, with a fierce sense of self-worth. They are denied so much, but they hold on to their dreams, their communities, their identity. Chapter 7. Songs of Strength, the Harlem Renaissance. In the heart of New York City, in a neighborhood called Harlem, something remarkable begins to stir. It is the 1920s, a time of jazz, of dance, of change sweeping across America. And in Harlem, a spark ignites. A spark that will become a flame of creativity, a flame that shines through the darkness of prejudice and hardship. Black poets, musicians, writers, and artists gather. They come from the South, fleeing Jim Crow, searching for new opportunities. They come from the North, from families who have lived free for generations. They come from the Caribbean, bringing rich cultures and histories of their own. Harlem becomes a gathering place, a vibrant community, a world within a world. In this place, they begin to create something powerful, something that had never been seen before. Here, in the heart of Harlem, Black Americans find their voices, their stories, and they share them with the world. This is more than art. It is a declaration, a way of saying, we are here, we matter, our stories matter. Langston Hughes, a young poet whose words dance and sing, capturing the joys and the struggles of Black life in America. He writes of rivers, of dreams, of laughter, of sorrow. His words flow like music, filled with rhythm, with emotion, with life. In his poetry, Black Americans see themselves, their lives, their struggles, their triumphs. Hughes does not shy away from the truth. He embraces it, paints it with words, making it beautiful, making it powerful. Then, there is Zora Neale Hurston, a writer with a voice all her own. She tells the stories of Black women, stories of strength, of resilience, of humor, of survival. Her words are bold, her characters full of life. She writes of love, of pain, of pride, of the rich lives Black people lead, lives that are too often ignored. Through her stories, Hurston shows the world the beauty and the complexity of Black womanhood. And then, there is Duke Ellington. When Duke sits at the piano, something magical happens. His fingers fly over the keys, creating music that lifts the heart, that makes the soul dance. Jazz fills the air, pouring out of clubs and theaters, bringing people together. Black, white, rich, poor. Everyone wants to hear this music, to feel its power. Jazz becomes the heartbeat of Harlem, a sound of freedom, a sound of strength. The Harlem Renaissance. It is a time of art, of music, of words, yes. But it is also a movement, a way for Black Americans to reclaim their identity, to tell their own stories in their own voices. They are no longer willing to be silent, to let others define who they are. They create their own image, a proud, beautiful image of Black life in America. Pain and pride, joy and sorrow. All of it flows through the art of the Harlem Renaissance. Black artists are no longer just surviving, they are thriving, they are shining, showing the world the depth and richness of their culture. Harlem becomes a place of hope, a place where dreams feel possible, where Black Americans can finally breathe, create, and celebrate their heritage. And this art, it resonates far beyond Harlem. People from all over the country, from all over the world, feel its impact. They see the beauty, the power, the resilience in these works, the poetry, the music, the stories. They become a bridge, connecting people across divides, opening hearts, sparking conversations. The Harlem Renaissance is more than an artistic movement. It is a cultural revolution. In these years, Harlem becomes a symbol of Black excellence, of pride, of hope. It shows that even in the face of discrimination, of prejudice, Black Americans can create, can shine, can inspire. Harlem becomes a place where Black children can see artists, writers, musicians who look like them, who have succeeded, who have found their voices. And it is not just the artists. In Harlem, thinkers, activists, leaders come together, discussing ideas, debating, dreaming of a better future. The Renaissance is not just about art, it is about identity, about community, about building something that will last. It is about saying, we are here and we will not be erased. As the 1930s approach, the Harlem Renaissance begins to fade, but its impact remains. Echoes of this movement can still be heard, still be felt. The artists, the musicians, the writers, they have left a legacy that will inspire generations. The Harlem Renaissance is a song of strength, a reminder that no matter how high the walls, no matter how strong the chains, the human spirit will find a way to rise, to sing, to shine. And so, Harlem stands, not just as a place, but as a symbol, a beacon of creativity, of resilience, of pride. It is a reminder that even in the face of hardship, of struggle, there is beauty, there is hope, there is strength. The flame of the Harlem Renaissance may have flickered, but its light still guides us forward. Chapter 8. Silent Courage. The Seeds of Change. In the quiet corners of America, a new kind of courage begins to grow, silent, steady, but powerful. The country is on the brink of change, yet the world barely notices at first. For Black Americans, life under Jim Crow is filled with hardship, with injustice, but also with a fierce, determined hope. And here, in this hope, the seeds of the civil rights movement are quietly planted. It starts small, almost invisible. A few voices, a few people who are simply tired of being pushed down, ignored, silenced. They know the risks. They've seen the violence. Yet still, they rise. They come together in churches, community centers, living rooms. They meet in secrecy, planning, dreaming, daring to imagine a world where their voices can be heard. One winter day in Montgomery, Alabama, a woman named Rosa Parks takes a stand by sitting down. The bus is crowded. The rules are clear. Black passengers must give up their seats if a white person is standing. But Rosa, weary of years of humiliation, stays seated, Her heart pounds, her hands grip her purse, but she doesn't move. This one act, a simple no, sparks a fire that will light up the nation. Rose's arrest becomes a rallying point, a spark that brings Black Americans together in a new way. Soon, the Montgomery bus boycott begins. Men, women, children, all refusing to ride the buses. They walk miles to work, to school, to the store, their shoes wearing thin, their feet aching. But they don't stop. Day after day they walk, rain or shine, standing together in silent defiance. The city feels the impact, the buses run empty, and the world begins to notice. But the seeds of change are not only in Montgomery. Across the South, Black students prepare for their own quiet acts of courage. They gather at lunch counters marked whites only, knowing they will face anger, hatred, maybe even violence. Yet they sit, calm, determined, refusing to move. They are met with shouts, with insults, even with physical attacks. But still they sit, with dignity and unshakable resolve. These students, young men and women, some barely out of high school, become symbols of resistance. They are showing the world that justice is not found through violence, but through peaceful protest. They take the blows, they endure the humiliation, all for the sake of a dream. A dream that one day they will be seen as equals. And it doesn't stop there. In cities and towns, ordinary Black Americans, teachers, ministers, factory workers, mothers, fathers, all join the cause. They form groups, organize meetings, prepare for marches. They know the risks, but they believe in the power of unity, of standing together. They know that each small act, each quiet moment of bravery, adds to something larger, something unstoppable. The leaders of this movement are not always those in the spotlight. Many remain unnamed, unknown. They are the people who open their homes to hold secret meetings, the women who cook for marchers, who sew signs and banners, who pray and hope. They are the ones who stay in the background, supporting, building, nurturing the movement with their silent courage. Yet, in this silence there is a roar of determination, of resilience. Each act of bravery, no matter how small, is a step toward justice. And with each step, they grow stronger, more united, and the walls of segregation start to shake, to crumble. And soon, the seeds they've planted begin to grow into something that cannot be ignored. Chapter 9. Marching Toward Freedom. The Civil Rights Movement. The streets tremble, filled with the rhythm of thousands of feet. Marching, marching, marching toward freedom. This is the Civil Rights Movement, a powerful wave sweeping through America, breaking down barriers, demanding justice, and refusing to be ignored. Black Americans, joined by allies of all backgrounds, take to the streets, chanting, singing, their voices strong, defiant, and filled with hope. The leaders rise, voices of courage, voices that will echo through history. Martin Luther King Jr., a man of vision, of peace, a preacher with a voice like thunder and words that pierce the heart. "I have a dream," he says, standing tall at the Lincoln Memorial, and the crowd holds its breath. He speaks of a world where people are judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. His dream becomes the dream of millions, a hope that one day this world of equality will come true. In the cities of the South, tension is high. Selma, a small town in Alabama, but now it's a name the world will never forget. Black Americans line up to register to vote, exercising a right they have been denied for too long. But they face resistance, violent resistance. They are pushed back, told to go home, but they return, stronger each time, determined to be heard. Then comes Bloody Sunday. The protesters gather, led by John Lewis, a young man of fierce courage. They start across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, marching peacefully, arm in arm. But waiting on the other side are state troopers, armed and ready. The protesters step forward, and then chaos. Batons swing, smoke fills the air, screams ring out. They are attacked, beaten, yet they do not fight back. They fall, they bleed, but they rise again, determined to continue, to march on, to demand their rights. The world watches, horrified. The images flash across television screens, and people can no longer look away. This is what the struggle for freedom looks like, the cost, the sacrifice. The brutality faced by the peaceful protesters shakes the nation's conscience. Calls for justice grow louder. Black and white Americans, North and South, join hands, determined to put an end to the cruelty, to the hate. And then there is Malcolm X, his voice sharp, bold, fierce. Where King speaks of dreams, Malcolm speaks of action, of strength, of self-defense. By any means necessary, he says, and his words ignite a different fire. He demands dignity, demands that Black Americans stand tall, unafraid. Malcolm's message is a call to take pride in Black identity, to demand respect, to refuse to live in fear. His words stir the hearts of many, calling for a new sense of self-worth. And the marches continue. From Selma to Montgomery, from churches to city halls, from rural roads to busy streets. The marchers carry signs, lift their voices in songs of freedom. They know the risks. They face arrest, violence, even death, but they keep going. They keep chanting, "We shall overcome." It is a promise, a belief that one day this fight will bring real change. The streets become rivers of people, flowing with hope, with resistance, with courage. The Freedom Riders, young Black and white students, travel together on buses, defying segregation laws. They are attacked, their buses set on fire, but they do not turn back. Each attack only strengthens their resolve. Each moment of bravery adds to the movement, making it unstoppable. And then, the March on Washington. The air buzzes with energy as people from all over the country pour into the Capitol. The steps of the Lincoln Memorial are filled with faces of every color, every background. They are here for one reason: to demand equality, to demand that America lives up to its promise of freedom for all. As Martin Luther King Jr. speaks, the crowd feels the power of his words, words that will become a cornerstone of the movement, a symbol of hope for generations to come. But the road is not easy, and the victories do not come without heartbreak. Churches are bombed, children lose their lives, families are shattered. Hate strikes back, trying to silence the voices of change. But each tragedy, each loss, only strengthens the movement. For every life lost, 1,000 more voices rise, calling for justice, calling for peace. Finally, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is signed into law. It is a moment of triumph, a step forward, a victory against the walls of segregation, a promise that Black Americans will no longer be forced into the shadows. And the Voting Rights Act of 1965 follows, tearing down the barriers that kept Black Americans from the polls. These victories are hard-won, paid for by the courage and sacrifice of those who marched, who protested, who refused to back down. The movement has changed America. forever. It has shown the world that justice is worth fighting for, that freedom is not given, but won. The voices of the civil rights movement will echo through history, reminding us of the power of unity, of resilience, of courage in the face of hatred. The march toward freedom. It is far from over. But the civil rights movement has blazed a trail, one that will guide future generations. This is the legacy of those who marched, who fought, who dreamed of a world where all people could walk free. Chapter 10. Words that Changed the World. Landmark Legislation and Speeches. Words. Words can move mountains, heal wounds, light fires of hope. And in this chapter, we find words that do all of these, words that echo across a nation, demanding justice, compassion, equality. These are not just any words. They are words that change history. In August of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. stands before thousands gathered at the Lincoln Memorial. The air is thick with anticipation. People have come from every corner of the country, tired of injustice, ready for change. King takes a breath, his voice steady and strong. "I have a dream," he begins. A dream of a future where children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Each word he speaks is like a heartbeat, a promise, a vision. His dream is not just for himself, it is for every person who longs to be free, to be seen, to be valued. The words of King's speech soar, filling the crowd with hope. They envision a world where equality is real, where freedom is shared by all. And the people listen, their hearts stirred, their spirits lifted. They feel that maybe, just maybe, this dream could become reality. But words alone cannot break chains. Laws must change too. In 1964, after years of struggle, after marches, protests, and painful sacrifices, the Civil Rights Act is signed into law. President Lyndon B. Johnson stands before the nation, holding the pen that will rewrite history. The Civil Rights Act outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin. It declares that segregation in schools, in restaurants, in theaters, in public places must end. It is a victory. But it is only the beginning. For the right to vote, the power to choose leaders, to have a voice in government, is still out of reach for many Black Americans. In the South, they are blocked at every turn, forced to take literacy tests, pay poll taxes, face threats and violence. The right to vote is supposed to be theirs, yet it is taken from them again and again. The movement does not stop. It presses forward, and the marches continue. In Selma, Alabama, hundreds of Black Americans gather to demand their voting rights. They are met with brutality on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, beaten back by troopers with clubs and tear gas. But the images of that day, Bloody Sunday, spread across the country. People see the violence, the cruelty, and they know that something must change. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act is signed. This law protects the right to vote for all citizens, outlawing the barriers that kept Black Americans from the polls. It is a monumental step, a hard-won victory that came at great cost. The Voting Rights Act is a beacon of hope, a sign that the voices of Black Americans can no longer be ignored. Yet, the struggle is not over. These laws, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, they are powerful. They open doors that were once slammed shut, but they cannot erase centuries of prejudice, poverty, pain. The words on paper are a promise, but they are not the end of the fight. Laws can change the rules, but they cannot change minds, hearts, or beliefs overnight. In neighborhoods, in schools, in workplaces, discrimination continues. Many Black Americans still face housing discrimination, unequal education, and fewer job opportunities. The law says they are equal, but society still holds them apart, still treats them as less than. The words of these laws are strong, but they must be upheld, defended, expanded, until equality is not just written, but lived. And the words of leaders like King, like Malcolm X, like John Lewis, continue to inspire, to teach. Their speeches, their letters, their dreams are carried forward, passed down, remembered by generations who follow. They are reminders that the fight for justice never truly ends, that each generation must take up the mantle, must walk the path laid before them. Chapter 11. Rise of Black Power. Pride and Identity. A new voice rises, a voice filled with power, pride, and purpose. It is the late 1960s and 1970s, a time of great change and fierce determination. The civil rights movement has opened doors, made strides, but the road to true equality remains long, steep, and rough. For many Black Americans, patience has worn thin. Now they declare, no more waiting. The era of Black power has arrived. Black power. These words thunder across the nation, carrying a message that can no longer be ignored. This movement calls for Black Americans to reclaim their heritage, to take pride in who they are, to demand respect, and to be unapologetically Black. The message is simple but bold. Black Americans will no longer ask for dignity. They will claim it. Stokely Carmichael is one of the voices leading this charge. A young, charismatic leader with fierce energy, he captures the spirit of this new movement. At rallies, he raises his fist and shouts, "Black power!" It is a cry for strength, a call to action, a statement of pride. Carmichael's words inspire thousands, filling them with a sense of unity and purpose. To him, Black power means self-respect, self-love, and the courage to stand tall, no matter the obstacles. The Black Panther Party rises alongside this message. Formed in Oakland, California, the Panthers bring a new energy to the struggle for equality. They wear black berets, leather jackets, and carry themselves with confidence and purpose. They are not just a symbol, they are a force. The Panthers stand against police brutality, offer community programs, and provide food, medical care, and education in underserved Black neighborhoods. They teach self-defense, both physically and mentally, preparing Black Americans to stand firm in a society that often tries to tear them down. The Panthers also inspire fear and respect. Some see them as dangerous, but to many in the Black community, they are protectors, role models, warriors for justice. They don't just talk about change. They live it, breathe it, fight for it. Their message is clear. Black Americans will take control of their own destiny. They will build their own communities, their own strength, their own pride. But Black power is about more than just physical strength. It's about pride in Black identity, culture, and history. Black Americans start to embrace their African roots, learning about their heritage, reclaiming traditions and stories that had been erased or hidden. They celebrate natural beauty, choosing to wear their hair in afros, a powerful statement of self-acceptance and pride. Black is beautiful, they say, And this phrase becomes more than just words. It is a celebration of Black life, Black culture, Black resilience. Music, art, literature, these too become powerful expressions of Black power. Songs with strong beats, bold lyrics, and rhythms that echo Africa's heart fill the air. James Brown belts out, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud," and it becomes an anthem, a rallying cry for a generation. Black poets, painters, and authors create works that celebrate their experiences, their struggles, and their triumphs. Through their art, they tell the world, "We are here, we are strong, and we will not be silent." This movement is not without its challenges. The message of Black power is misunderstood, even feared, by many. Some see it as anger, as division, as a rejection of the ideals of peaceful protest. But for those within the movement, Black power is about self-respect, dignity, and a fierce sense of independence. It is not about hate. It is about pride. It is about saying, we are worthy, we are powerful, and we will no longer shrink ourselves to fit into a world that refuses to see our worth. For some, Black power is liberation. For others, it is a confrontation. But for Black Americans, it is a declaration that they will not wait for society to grant them equality. They will claim it themselves. They will lift up their voices, celebrate their heritage, and demand a place in this world as equals, as individuals, as a community. As the 1970s move forward, the power of this movement is felt everywhere. Schools, universities, and communities embrace Black history, teaching the stories, the achievements, the resilience of Black people. In households, families share stories of African ancestors, tales of courage and endurance, and the pride in being a part of this legacy grows stronger with each passing day. Black power has planted a seed, one that grows into a deep-rooted pride, a strength that will last for generations. This era, this powerful movement, is a reminder to Black Americans that they are not defined by the limitations placed upon them. They are defined by their history, their resilience, and their unity. The nation feels the strength of Black power, a movement that says, "We are here, we are proud, and we will rise." Chapter 12. Legacy and Ongoing Struggle, From Civil Rights to Today. The journey isn't over. The story of Black history in America, filled with bravery, with resilience, with unimaginable strength, is still unfolding. The civil rights movement brought change, new laws, new hope. But the fight for justice, for true equality, is far from finished. The impact of the civil rights movement is seen everywhere, in schools, workplaces, and in the rights that so many once fought and died for. It is a legacy of courage, of standing tall against injustice. Yet, as we look around today, we see that the struggle continues, and Black Americans still face challenges, still push forward, still rise. In neighborhoods across America, from city streets to rural towns, systemic racism continues to cast a long shadow. Police brutality, housing discrimination, unequal education, and the lasting scars of poverty remind us that change has come, but it is not complete. Black Americans are still fighting, still demanding to be seen, heard, and valued. But in this fight, there is also pride, a powerful pride born of survival, of strength, of victories both big and small. A new generation has risen, inspired by those who came before them, heroes whose names are etched in history, and those whose names we may never know. This generation refuses to settle for halfway equality, refuses to be silent in the face of injustice. They march in the streets. They raise their voices. They make art. They create. They inspire. This legacy has given them strength. They look back on the path their ancestors carved through slavery, through Jim Crow, through segregation. They stand on the shoulders of giants like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and so many others, carrying forward the dream of a world where freedom, respect, and dignity are not privileges, but rights. And in this new generation, we see hope. Social media becomes a powerful tool, connecting millions across the globe, shining a light on injustice, sparking conversations, and giving a voice to the voiceless. Movements like Black Lives Matter bring attention to the reality of police violence, to the lives lost, to the deep wounds left unhealed. They call for change, for accountability, for a future where every life is valued, where Black Americans can live without fear, without discrimination. These voices, young and old, join in a powerful chorus, echoing the words of past struggles while writing new verses for today. Their message? The fight for equality, for justice, for freedom, is not over. Each protest, each speech, each piece of art adds to the legacy, a reminder that every generation has a role to play in the march toward justice. And while the struggle continues, so does the celebration of Black culture, identity, and history. From literature to music, from film to fashion, Black Americans have woven their heritage into the fabric of America. Black excellence shines in all fields, in science, in art, in sports, in business. It is a testament to the strength of a people who have not only survived, but thrived, who have created beauty and joy, even in the face of hardship. The journey of Black history is not just a tale of struggle. It is one of unbreakable spirit, of resilience, of endless hope. This story is still being written, and each chapter brings new challenges, new victories, new dreams. The future, like the past, is filled with both difficulty and possibility. And Black Americans stand ready to meet it with the same courage, the same pride, the same unyielding strength that has carried them forward for generations. The story of Black history is far from over, and the future, bright and full of promise, is waiting.